Caliban and the Witch, section. Sexual politics, the rise of the state, and counter-revolution. However, by the end of the 15th century, a counter-revolution was already underway at every level of social and political life. First, efforts were made by the political authorities to co-opt the youngest and most rebellious male workers. By means of a vicious sexual politics that gave them access to free sex, and turned class antagonism into an antagonism against proletarian women. As Jacques Rousseau has shown in Medieval Prostitution, in France, the municipal authorities practically decriminalized rape, provided the victims were women of lower class. In 14th century Venice, the rape of an unmarried proletarian woman rarely called for more than a slap on the wrist, even in the frequent case in which it involved a group assault. The same was true in most French cities. Here, the gang rape of proletarian women became a common practice which the perpetrators would carry out openly and loudly at night, in groups of 2 to 15, breaking into their victims' homes or dragging their victims through the streets, without any attempt to hide or disguise themselves. Those who engaged in these, quote, sports, were young journeymen or domestic servants, and the penniless sons of well-to-do families, while the women targeted were poor girls, working as maids or washerwomen, of whom it was rumored that they were, quote, kept by their masters. On average, half of the town male youths at some point engaged in these assaults, which Rousseau describes as a form of class protest, a means for proletarian men, who were forced to postpone marriage for many years because of their economic conditions, to get back, quote, their own, and take revenge against the rich. But the results were destructive for all workers, as the state-backed raping of poor women undermined the class solidarity that had been achieved in the anti-feudal struggle. Not surprisingly, the authorities viewed the disturbances caused by such policy, the brawls, the presence of youth roaming the streets at night in search of adventure and disturbing the public quiet, as a small price to pay in exchange for a lessening of social tensions, obsessed as they were with the fear of urban insurrections, and the belief that if the poor gained the upper hand, they would take their wives and hold them in common. Picture: a brothel from a 15th century German woodcut. Brothels were seen as a remedy for social protest, heresy, and homosexuality. End of caption. For proletarian women, so cavalierly sacrificed by masters and servants alike, the price to be paid was inestimable. Once raped, they could not easily regain their place in society. Their reputation being destroyed, they would have to leave town or turn to prostitution. But they were not the only ones to suffer. The legalization of rape created a climate of intense misogyny that degraded all women, regardless of class. It also desensitized the population to the perpetration of violence against women, preparing the ground for the witch hunt which began in the same period. It was at the end of the 14th century that the first witch trials took place, and for the first time the Inquisition recorded the existence of an all-female heresy and sect of devil worshippers. Another aspect of the divisive sexual politics that the princes and municipal authorities pursued to diffuse workers' protest was the institutionalization of prostitution, implemented through the opening of municipal brothels, soon proliferating throughout Europe. Enabled by the contemporary high-wage regime, state-managed prostitution was seen as a useful remedy for the turbulence of proletarian youth, who in La Grande Maison, as the state brothel was called in France, could enjoy a privilege previously reserved for older men. The municipal brothel was also considered a remedy against homosexuality, which in several European towns was widely and publicly practiced, e.g. in Padua and Florence, but in the aftermath of the Black Death was beginning to be feared as a cause of depopulation. Footnote: Thus, the proliferation of public brothels was accompanied by a campaign against homosexuals that spread even to Florence, where homosexuality was an important part of the social fabric, quote, attracting males of all ages, matrimonial conditions, and social rank. So popular was homosexuality in Florence that prostitutes used to wear male clothes to attract their customers. Signs of a change in Florence were two initiatives which the authorities introduced in 1403, when the city banned, quote, sodomites from public office, and set up a watchdog commission devoted to the extirpation of homosexuality, the Office of Decency. But significantly, the main step which the office took was to make preparations for the opening of new public brothel, so that, by 1418, the authorities were still looking for means to eradicate sodomy, quote, from the city and from the county. On the Florentine government's promotion of publicly funded prostitution as a remedy against population decline and, quote, sodomy, see also Richard C. Trexler. Quote, like other Italian cities of the 15th century, Florence believed that officially sponsored prostitution combated two other evils of incomparably greater moral and social import: male homosexuality, whose practice was thought to obscure the difference between the sexes, and thus all difference and decorum, and the decline in the legitimate population, which resulted from an insufficient number of marriages. End quote. Trexler points out that the same correlation between the spread of homosexuality, population decline, and the sponsorship of public prostitution can be found in the late 14th century, early 15th century Lucca, Venice, and Siena, and that the growth in the number and social power of prostitutes eventually led to a backlash, so that, whereas, quote, in the early 15th century, preachers and statesmen in Florence had deeply believed that no city could long endure in which females and males seemed the same, a century later, they wondered if it could survive when upper-class women could not be distinguished from brothel prostitutes. End quote and end of footnote. Thus, between 1350 and 1450, publicly managed, tax-financed brothels were opened in every town and village in Italy and France, in numbers far superior to those reached in the 19th century. Amiens alone had 53 brothels in 1453. In addition, all the restrictions and penalties against prostitution were eliminated. Prostitutes could now solicit their clients in every part of town, even in front of the church during Mass. They were no longer bound to any particular dress codes or the wearing of distinguishing marks, because prostitution was officially recognized as a public service. Even the church came to see prostitution as a legitimate activity. The state-managed brothel was believed to provide an antidote to the orgiastic sexual practices of the heretic sects, and to be a remedy for sodomy, as well as a means to protect family life. It is difficult retrospectively to tell how far playing the, quote, sex card helped the state to discipline and divide the medieval proletariat. What is certain is that this sexual, quote, New Deal was part of a broader process which, in response to the intensification of social conflict, led to the centralization of the state, as the oily agent capable of confronting the generalization of the struggle and safeguarding the class relations. In this process, as we will see later in this work, the state became the ultimate manager of class relation, and the supervisor of the reproduction of labor power, a function it has continued to perform today. In this capacity, state officers passed laws in many countries that set limits to the cost of labor, by fixing the maximum wage, forbid vagrancy, now harshly punished, and encouraged workers to reproduce. Ultimately, the mounting class conflict brought a new alliance between the bourgeoisie and the nobility, without which proletarian revolts may not have been defeated. It is difficult, in fact, to accept the claim, often made by historians, according to which these struggles had no chance of success due to the narrowness of their political horizons and the, quote, confused nature of the demands. In reality, the objectives of the peasants and artisans were quite transparent. They demanded that, quote, everyone should have as much as another. And in order to achieve this goal, they joined with all those who, quote, had nothing to lose, acting in concert in different regions, not afraid to confront the well-trained armies of the nobility, despite their lack of military skills. If they were defeated, it was because all the forces of feudal power, the nobility, the church, and the bourgeoisie, moved against them united, despite their traditional divisions, by their fear of proletarian rebellion. Indeed, the image that has been handed down to us of a bourgeoisie perennially at war with the nobility, and carrying on its banners the call for equality and democracy, is a distortion. By the late Middle Ages, wherever we turn, from Tuscany to England and the Low Countries, we find the bourgeoisie already allied with the nobility in the suppression of the lower classes. Footnote. In Tuscany, where the democratization of political life had proceeded further than in any other European region, by the second half of the 15th century there was an inversion of this tendency and a restoration of the power of the nobility. Promoted by the mercantile bourgeoisie to block the rise of the lower classes. By this time, an organic fusion had occurred between the families of the merchants and those of the nobility, achieved by means of marriages and the sharing of prerogatives. This put an end to that social mobility that had been the major achievement of urban society and communal life in medieval Tuscany. An image, Albrecht Dürer, The Fall of Man. This powerful scene, on the expulsion of Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden, evokes the expulsion of the peasantry from its common lands, which was starting to occur across Western Europe at the very time when Dürer was producing this work. End of footnote. For in the peasants and the democratic weavers and cobblers of its cities, the bourgeoisie recognized an enemy far more dangerous than the nobility, one that made it worthwhile for the burghers even to sacrifice their cherished political autonomy. Thus, it was the urban bourgeoisie, after 2 centuries of struggles waged in order to gain full sovereignty within the walls of its communes, who reinstated the power of the nobility, by voluntarily submitting to the rule of the prince, the first step on the road to the absolute state. End of section.